Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much, Jen, for this introduction, and welcome to the first session of this privacy camp. I'm going to call to join me on the virtual stage the speakers of today's panel. Noémie Levin from La Quadrature, Rena Tangens from Digital Courage, and Patrick Breyer, member of the European Parliament. The time to join, I'm going to introduce a little bit what we're going to talk in this room today. It's not a session where we're going to analyze what has been going on data retention on the political and legislative stages, so to say. There's been already quite a few events about like thinking what has been done in the past years in terms of case law, in terms of litigation by civil society groups. No, here what we want to do is really to focus on action, mobilization, what can be done in the next stages and in the next years as civil society to combat new initiatives, new laws at national and EU levels that will be proposed to maintain either data retention regime that exists or to propose new type of mass surveillance type of regimes like in many EU countries now. The idea is that we collectively brainstorm about the next step or how civil society can mobilize people against data retention. It's still like a big challenge when we think about data retention and explain it to layperson on the street, how it can impact her or him. And this is something we need to collectively think about because the story is not at the end, unfortunately, although we thought it would after the last Court of Justice case law and case. And for that, we will reflect with our speaker about the state of play. We will think about what are the current challenges, what has changed in the past 10 years or maybe 20 years on this topic. How can we approach it from a different perspective, maybe, to be more effective? And for that, maybe it's a good idea that with our speakers, we reflect on the past, what we have done in the past that has worked, what has worked less, how we can improve things. And we can also start like brainstorming collectively what can we be doing in the future, in the coming years. So for that, I will be accompanied by Patrick Breyer, if he's here. I hope I have my speakers. Rena Tangens, you can all like switch. Maybe while the technical issues are being solved, Guillermo, can I ask the public who they are, maybe? Like, are the polling questions ready? Here
Sorry, I can hear you now.
Cool.
I can hear you again.
Was I gone for a few seconds? Yeah, I just would like to invite the people to the stage. Noémie, hi.
Hello. I had some issue with my camera, but I'm here.
It's okay. It's the first session. Look at my face. It's still in the morning. Thank you. Hi, Rena.
Hi.
And while we're waiting for Patrick, I think Patrick is joining us as well. I wanted to ask a little bit who we have in the public to see like what kind of like people are following us this morning and whether they can participate in the brainstorm. So I prepared some questions to you. If it's possible to share them in the chat, like directed myself to the, yeah, exactly. Have you ever worked on data retention? Yes or no? So a third approximately of the people, of the viewers have already worked on it. 2/3 actually not. The next question then is dependent on the first question. So I'm addressing the 1/3 who already worked on data retention. With the second question, I wanted to know, like, for how long have you worked on it? Like, is it like less than 5 years? You're whoa. But only one person could actually answer. This is too bad.
That was too fast.
Sorry, once.
No problem. This is the testing session. You haven't been told. Too early in the morning, exactly. So for those of you who already worked on it, for how long have you been working on it is interesting. The interest we have is that because in this question is that some of our speakers have really long-term experience. I'm looking at you, Rena, and some maybe less. And it's interesting because you're coming from different perspectives, different angle. Okay, among the people who said they worked on it, some of them worked less than 5 years and more than 10 years. So we have like the two extreme. It's not super representative, obviously, but still interesting to know. And the last question for me was to know from which angle did you approach this topic? Like, was it mainly like artistic engagement, or was it like more advocacy? So if the last question could be asked. Hi, Patrick. Yeah, everybody's here now. Cool. I'm just asking the last question to the people in the public who had the chance to work on data retention before. Yeah, so what I wanted to know is, from those of you who worked on it, and it's fine if you didn't in the past, there's still a chance to catch up, and we need all the energy possible on this topic. But from those of you who worked on data retention before, was it, where did you started working on it? Like mainly advocacy, working towards legislative change, mainly research, maybe in academia, mainly tech self-defense, let's say, like finding solutions to work against the retention of your personal data, or mainly campaign, you organize protests on the streets against, like on this topic, or any other. And if you have like, you've done something other than that, please share it in the chat. I really encourage like all of you, all the viewers, to use the chat during the session to share your experience and share, maybe even if you haven't worked on data retention, but you've been campaigning or working on a specific topic related to surveillance, do not hesitate to share it. Once the results are in on the chat, I'll consult them and the speakers as well. But I think this is good for the speakers to know who is following us. I'm going to actually head and give the floor to Patrick because in the first stage, we just wanted to remind everybody what the state of play is. So we actually share the same level of knowledge about what has been going on data retention in the past years. So I think it's good that we go over what happened. We thought we won on it. We thought we had a big case. We almost did it. And now actually it's starting all over again. Why is this topic still important today, Patrick? And could you summarize for us the latest political steps we saw?
Of course. Good morning. Thank you for organizing this panel, and I'm glad that we have activists among our listeners, so many who have been engaged in this fight for so long, as I can tell from the poll. So it's wonderful to be having this panel and wonderful panelists, and it's a good time to discuss data retention. Just to remind you what's so special about data retention in comparison to storage of other kinds of data. It is just simply information that reflects our daily communications and our daily movements, and also the IP addresses that we use on the internet that can be used to reconstruct our online activities. So unlike with other data, it is very comprehensive. It exposes your social network, it exposes our personal connections and problems, possibly. It allows forecast your behavior, to deduce patterns, movements, etc. So it's extremely sensitive data, and it's being retained without any business need or any other necessity to do so. So that's why the European Court of Justice decided in a landmark decision, Digital Rights Ireland, that it is Sorry, I think we lost the image. Is it better now?
Yeah, and I think you were cut for a few seconds. Just the last sentence where I was.
Okay. The EU Court of Justice decided it's not proportionate to retain and collect information about the communications and locations of the entire population that are completely unconnected to any crime whatsoever, just because they might be of interest in the future. And that was really a landmark decision, but it was never really implemented, except maybe in those countries where the specific decision was taken, but not even there. So in Ireland, for example, they still have indiscriminate data retention in place. And so basically, member states refused to heed it, to implement it, and the Commission refuses to enforce it because the Commission is of a different view itself. In fact, even the European Data Protection Supervisor in those court proceedings argued something along the lines that the retention is not the problem, it's about the access, which is not true because it's the retention that has the chilling effect. The knowledge that your communications, your behavior could be used against you. That is what has the chilling effect. And yet, member states ignored it and challenged it. And what happened was that they did actually manage that the court watered down its jurisprudence and its case law, and in the latest decision allowed for a measure of data retention where in case of a threat to national security, which is used by France, for example, to argue, well, we have a permanent threat to our national security, and so we'll just retain everything all the time. And of course, we'll allow prosecutors to use it for prosecuting crime as well. They have allowed for the so-called targeted data retention, so you can retain data in certain areas. And that is being used by member states such as Denmark or Belgium to have basically, 80% or 90% of the country covered. with some reasons above average crime rate, that they're at railway stations, whatever you have it. And basically it means that in those countries, people are nearly as exposed to having their data retained as according to the indiscriminate regime. And also they allowed for indiscriminate retention of IP addresses, even though that allows for reconstruction of the online activities in combination with the log files that are being kept. And what happened last year, what was revealed, was that the Commission already released a paper to propose to member states how they could bring back data retention in line with the court requirements by interpreting them very extensively. And the only reason why member states are not enthusiastic about it is that they basically would prefer to ignore the court rulings altogether and go along with the existing law, indiscriminate and for all data types. And so there is a threat that despite some positive developments, such as in the German coalition treaty and agreement, that this data retention will be imposed by way of the EU level on all member states. And that's why it's a really good time to act now, because this is at early stages. The Commission has collected feedback from member states. They are waiting for a court decision on Germany's data retention regime that's coming up in the next few months. And then they will act. And it is clear that the Commission will propose a maximum measure possible. They actually consider extending data retention to OTT services, which would for the first time include messaging services, possibly video conferencing services, internet email, etc. They could actually mandate identification. So it could eliminate anonymous accounts. And all that is a real threat that needs addressing. So it's very timely to be having this panel today.
Thank you so much, Patrick, for the very good summarize. So we hear it well. I think what the Commission is planning is still very unknown, and I'm not sure they have a good idea themselves what they want to do, actually. But this is to our advantage, because we can come and be prepared when the proposal comes out. And in any case, we need some mobilization currently at national level, where member states are pushing more or less for a renewed regime on data retention in their domestic laws. Before maybe we think about future action and what can be done and learn a little bit from La Quadrature du Net case, I wanted to turn to Rena. Rena, you are an activist, like a really long-term activist in data protection. You co-founded Digital Courage, which had a different name at the time. And I'm not going to try to pronounce. You funded the Big Brother Awards, and you were also using arts at the time to fight against a surveillance issue in Germany. And I wanted to learn, and I think a lot of people in the public could learn from your experience and all your past mobilization. Could you tell us a little bit more how you became active on the topic? What did you do? It was in the 2000, if I'm not mistaken. Can you tell us a little bit more? How did you organize? How did you find partners? What did you do? And what do you think were your main victories?
Hey, yes, sure, it's a pleasure. Actually, we started back in 1987, and that was the decade where the big census in Germany should have happened, which then led to the Constitutional Court ruling for informational self-determination, which is a really important ruling. And everything else relies on that in terms of data protection law. So that was the time when a lot of people were active on this, and we had demonstrations and so on in the 80s against the census. I should mention that I'm not doing artwork to make something pretty and have a cool thing to show for demonstrations, but our concept of art is different. We rely actually on the French composer Erik Satie. His music was not meant to listen to, but to have it in the background and create a good atmosphere, so everyone feels comfortable. And it's actually the music tries to be boring, so you are not distracted, but you come to the point where you want to be active yourself. So this, in very short, the artistic concept we applied also to political and legal situations, which also create a room where you find yourself comfortable and wanting to contribute something, or you think you should rather stay quiet and don't do anything that attracts attention. And we think in a democracy we need people to feel comfortable, to feel confident to participate in the democratic process, and people can't do that when they feel under surveillance all the time. So that, in very short, is the artistic background of what we do. Well, about data, so we worked for data protection, privacy already since '87, but on data retention, this started in December 2005. There, the directive came into place, and we had a first meeting of different people from different organizations and also individuals at the Chaos Communication Congress. This is the biggest hacker meeting, and that was taking place in, I'm not sure, was it Hamburg or Berlin already? I'm not sure. Maybe it was Berlin. And there, very different people came from the critical people against globalization of ATTAC. There were people of the hackers from the Chaos Computer Club, and there were data protection officials actually taking part, and some activists. And this group decided we have to do something on data retention, because this has the potential to be really threatening for everybody. As you can figure out what someone is doing because you can follow them, their location, all their social networks, as Patrick explained already. So there was a mailing list was created, and we decided we have to work together, and that was great because more organizations and more individuals joined in. And the interesting thing is that we were successful to make people understand that everybody is really is affected. So we had groups joining in. You would not expect there, like doctors, journalists, lawyers, also therapists, and we had the AIDS, HIV counseling, the telephone counseling of the Protestant church in Germany, and so on, because they all saw that it has a chilling effect when people can't call a counseling line like this, when they think this is all recorded, that the fact that they have been calling there allows that you think they might be ill or something, or have a psychological problem. So I think one of the secrets of the success was that we actually were successful to attract a lot of different organizations that were opposing data retention for different reasons. And we started organizing demonstrations. The really big demonstration that was taking place several years was called Freiheit statt Angst in German, and this is where the Freedom Not Fear slogan, the motto of our annual meeting of European activists in Brussels, comes from. Freedom Not Fear, or Freiheit statt Angst, means we don't want to be protected. Don't make us fearful and pretend you want to protect us. We think democracy and freedom is more to protect. We protect it and keep away from us. And we actually were successful to bring people of very different political backgrounds together. We had people from the left, the Greens, the Pirate Party, and the Liberals, the Free Democrats of Germany. At the same time, there were the anti-capitalist bloc there, and a block of doctors that came in white, in their white coats, and so it was very colorful and a lot of creative action of people who protested. And people founded local groups and that organized events in their town and made info stands in the pedestrian areas, and so there was a lot of engagement. Also because we had a common goal for in the first place to stop data retention by the way of the constitutional complaint. Patrick really earns the credits for this because I think he wrote most of the text of the constitutional complaint in cooperation with Meinert Starostik, our lawyer, which sadly died some years ago. He was a fantastic person, and he was always engaged in defending freedom and civil rights. Yeah, that was, you see Patrick in one of the early demonstrations making a talk next to Padloon of Digital Courage. And we started with 250 people at the demonstration. At the next, there were something like 500, and then more than 1,000, and then we have had 15,000, and then at some time we had 50,000, and that was just a fantastic experience to see that. Here you see people of Arbeitskreis Vorratsdatenspeicherung. That's a free group with no, it's no association in the legal sense, but it was a free association of people. The local groups always called themselves Arbeitskreis Vorratsdatenspeicherung, Bielefeld or Berlin or whatever, and we had a lot of them. Yeah, we had quite a number of demonstrations. That is also in Berlin. But a lot of local initiatives who did things I would not have recommended. I would have thought as an experienced activist, this does not work. For instance, people carried a coffin around and said to show we bury democracy, we bury fundamental rights, and we thought this is so boring. People have done that in the 70s, you know, but most people don't remember this. So it actually worked to attract attention, and this coffin was carried around Hamburg, I think that was. And so a lot of creativity and actions and to activate people happened. That was great. And of course, collecting signatures for the constitutional complaint was a big thing, as people saw they can actually have an impact when they support this constitutional complaint. And we collected these signatures, not like these organizations who do that online, but people gave their real life signature on paper as it's, I don't know the exact term, to give the lawyer the authority to apply in their name at the court. So, and this was the biggest mass constitutional complaint. We had almost 35,000 people who signed this, and so we have been bringing really a lot of paper to the Constitutional Court for who were the plaintiffs at this court. And no, please go back in the picture, Frank. Look at this. This is Potsdamer Platz in Berlin. You can see how many people attended these demonstrations. And the speaker there is Thilo Weichert, who is a data protection officer of Schleswig-Holstein. There were masses of people, and it was a great feeling for everybody to see we are not alone. And I think this is the main learning, to see we can actually move something, we can have an impact, we can change things. And a demonstration does not only show this to other people, to politicians, but also to any people who are active, to see they are not alone. This is a very important function also of a demonstration. Well, if we jump on to the next picture, Frank, that was in at the European Court, and I have been attending this in 2013. I traveled there, and the German television was there with me. That was quite fun, and I wanted comments on this. This was the ruling against the directive on data retention, and I could not believe how harsh the judges were dealing with these government officials and trying to get information from them. Why do you have data retention? Why do you think it's useful? And as an example, the Austrian government said we had 120 cases, more or less. We have used data retention on. We couldn't have solved them otherwise. And the judges asked, what were the crimes? And the guy of the Austrian government said, well, it was, let me see, it was fraud, dealing with stolen goods, drug trafficking, and insulting other people. And the judge said, did you have any terrorism cases? And the Austrian guy said, no, I can't see any. And then the judge said, and you have used data retention on cases of insult? Really? And the Austrian guy said, yes, because we had the data anyway. So we just used it. And so I could not believe that he actually said that, because he couldn't have given us a better argument on that. Of the function creep, then when the data has been collected, it will be used because it's there. And people, organizations, and also corporations might get hold of the data as soon as it's collected. Something like this will happen. So yeah, I was astonished how the judges were they're dealing with the government officials, and other activists said, "Oh, this does not mean anything. They will not do anything important in the end." But I was very happy to learn afterwards that they actually decided that the European directive was not in terms with the European Charter of Fundamental Rights. Yes.
A very positive outcome in the end of your campaign.
So maybe this picture is showing us also. You can see Patrick again. We are on the, and Meinhard Starostik is the guy with the orange scarf, our lawyer, and we are on the way the second time to the Constitutional Court because the data retention is in place now again. And just one point I want to make is that in the first ruling of the Constitutional Court, the court said it's unconstitutional and void, the German law on data retention, but it did not say data retention can't be done as such. So under certain conditions, it could be there could be a law for data retention. But they said there are certain conditions. You can't rule the data retention law just as such. You have to look at the context. Are there other laws in place? And when there is more surveillance in place, then citizens will feel under surveillance all the time, and this is not possible in a democracy. So the term that was coined then is Überwachungsgesamtrechnung. This means overall account of current surveillance laws. So the politicians have to take in account that how many other laws are there for surveillance, and can't decide for another law adding surveillance to this. And what we have done is we made a list of all the laws that were added on this since 2010. This is when the Constitutional Court said, no, it's unconstitutional. This was a tedious work, but in the end, the Liberal Party Foundation took up the work, and this ended up in the German coalition contract. So in Germany, when new laws are decided on, the German Bundestag must take into account what the total accounting of surveillance laws is. And it's mentioned in the coalition contract, and I think this is a big success. Okay, I think I make a point here, and you can ask any questions.
Of course, you can ask any question to Rena and Patrick already. Thank you so much for this rendition of all the work you've done since the late 90s, actually. And I think this already shows a lot of great lessons or takeaway we can do for this session. Like, I understand that it was a combination of different action, of different types of action. It was advocacy with the list you just mentioned, showcasing how many surveillance laws were already in place. It was about litigation, bringing actually the case in front of courts, asking for a review of the legality of those laws, but in the end also showcasing your power by bringing people to the streets in numbers. And that is very impressive, as well as actually bringing different people around the table and highlighting their voice, bringing their voice to the table, those who we don't think at first might be affected, but are in direct line. So that's already very inspiring, I think, for how we could design our own next action in this field. I want to turn to Noémie, who has more recent experience. Noémie is member of La Quadrature du Net and other EDRI members, such as Digital Courage. This is our member in France, and now Noémie is also the legal advisor, I would translate it this way in English, of La Quadrature, recently joined the team. And we are very happy to have her this morning. She also was part of the litigation team at La Quadrature when the case, the French law was brought in front of courts, and it ended up in this now famous landmark ruling, I would say, at the Court of Justice. Obviously, the aftermath was very disappointing for you guys. I wanted to know the reason for that is the Conseil d'État actually circumvented the whole kind of conclusion from the Court of Justice. And I wanted to know how La Quadrature lived through this journey. What did you learn, guys? What was the positive aspect? What was the kind of the defeat or the negative things you wouldn't have done again? And what are for you the next step after this disappointment? How you pass that feeling, and how are you going to continue working on this topic?
Well, hello. Thank you for the invitation first. Well, actually, yes, with La Quadrature, we challenged this topic only on a litigation aspect. And to resume, it was a long fight. And I think what we can say now, we have a big, very sensitive example of how politics and law and litigation can interfere. Because when we first went before the judge, actually the starting point was the Digital Rights Ireland decision that Patrick Breyer talked about. And for us, it was really great. It was a material and substantial argument to show the judge to challenge the legality of such retention and access of data. And so we went on a first time before the judge. We were actually ruled out because we were actually, the Council of State said that we were misinterpreting the Digital Rights Ireland decision. So we had to wait for the TD2 ruling to go back. And then it was long, because why I say there are interference with politics is that at the same time, there was negotiation on the e-privacy regulation in Brussels. And so we know that France had a big part on it. So our action before the judge at that time really stopped during 2 or 3 years, because the Council of State knew that there was some interest in Brussels. And so we had to wait until 2018 to have our preliminary ruling transmitted to the court. But again, we saw that the Council of State didn't do this just to enforce the law. The way of turning the question, the way of drafting the preliminary ruling really asked the court to change its position. So all that time we were quite happy, of course, with the TD2 ruling, but we knew also that there was so much interest there, that this topic is so sensitive when you talk about police and terrorism. So we were really waiting for this decision. And actually, when the Court of Justice decision came out in 2020, we had kind of mixed feelings, because, as Patrick Breyer said, it was creating exemptions. So it was for us kind of weaker decision, a weaker position than the TD2 ruling. But we also believed at the time that French law was going to change, because it didn't comply with this decision. And so, as you said, the Council of State, which is actually, for those who don't know, the French higher administrative court, interpreted it in a way that nothing changed. So it twisted the exception to make the retention and access actually permanent. And as Patrick Breyer said, the exemption of threat to national security was used to say that we are in a permanent threat, a permanent state of emergency, and so that the police and the intelligence services should should have the same power than before. So what our feelings, of course, we were disappointed, but we were also facing the limit of litigation, as the Council of State didn't actually enforce the law, didn't enforce what we have been doing for decades, which is make prevail European law on French law. And so it's more than a disappointment, it's also a loss of faith in the institution. Even, I don't know if we had too much faith, but now we don't have anymore. And how actually the police and the intelligence services can have so much influence. And maybe it's very specific also to how France works, because I think it can be different in different member states, because in France, this Council of State is not made of classical judge. The judge came out from a school that train also the higher executives that go into ministries. So it's the same people that actually judge our case and that also advise the politics. So it's a few hundred of people who are in the higher position of all institutions. So I think what we, after all this years, what we recall and what we were in face of is that really something cannot ever change. And this institution has hundreds of years, have existed for hundreds of years, have very prestigious and historical past. And so we believe that with our legal argument, with our European law, we could make things change, and actually we could not. And that's why we were disappointed. And actually, like almost a year later, we still don't know what we're going to do. We know that litigation cannot be used maybe to such big subjects. We still use it for smaller case or individual case, but that's also what's sad, is that we were trying to defend a collective subject, a collective cause, and maybe now we have to go back to more individual protection, to tell people how they can protect their privacy, or maybe to go do litigation on specific criminal individual case. We're still thinking about it because it has been, I think it was 6 years fight, and we went to the highest body in the European Union. So at least maybe we could go before the European Court of Human Rights, but there are also a lot of limitations to go before this judge. We could, there are also the option of asking the Commission to prosecute France, but we cannot do it ourselves, and that's a shame in European law, because we depend on a political body to do this action of failure. So actually, we are making maybe a pause on litigation, and that was really interesting to see Rena's history of activism, because we are also thinking maybe of doing a mix between litigation and going on the street, or doing some, as I said, training, or also tell people that they make them aware of where the data is going, because now that we lost, well, you have to be aware that if you have a phone, you're always tracked with your location. So maybe sometimes not take it, and it's a shame to go this far, but today we cannot. Well, the fight for the law is lost, so we have to go back to individual protection. And so that's some stuff we were thinking about. Also, maybe before the French decision, we were pushing to enforce European law instead of French law. So, for example, at La Quadrature, we have some social network, we host some social network, and we're saying we only keep the logs and the data a few weeks because we have the Tilly2 ruling and we want to enforce this decision. But now that the French law is clearer, well, we can maybe still do it, but we put ourselves at risk. But it's also a way of activism to actually not apply the law, but with, of course, all the limits it has. So we're thinking about all this, doing a mix of all this way of activism. And if we had to do it all over today, I don't know if we knew that it was going to end this way. I think we would not go. Because we were thinking that French law would apply and enforce European law. So actually, it's a very difficult question. Maybe we would do more specific law, or maybe we would do all the same again, because that also may shed light on this topic in France. And we are waiting to see how this decision is going to be taught in law school, because there were a lot of noise and fuss about it here. So we still have mixed feelings. We are happy that we went all through this journey, but it's very difficult. And as you said in the beginning of the talk, we have to do it all over again. We thought we won, and then maybe we have to see and observe what will going on in every member state in the few years, what the Commission is going to propose. But it's not as it did is also kind of an attack to European Union law, and it has done quite the same twice in the last year. So I think that's why I said at the beginning there are a lot of politics, and there is a tension right now between France and European Union. Well, that's what we saw. So of course, maybe we have to have this in mind and wait until it passes, or wait until we have some more idea, or wait until we know how to attack it. But of course, we won't give up. It's just that such a big event like we had makes as activists questions of where are going to a subject, and we made all our effort, all of our energy into litigation, and maybe we just have to wait and put our energy into something else before coming back. But thank you very much for the cheering and the encouragement.
Absolutely deserved. There is a question about exactly, maybe Noemi, you want to just respond directly. There's another question from Friedemann about what do you think the Court of Justice will do when it sees that there's such a almost rogue reaction to its own court case? What do you think the reaction would be? And Louisa also had a question to which Patrick actually answered in the chat, about Italy as well, obliging retention of metadata for 6 years, I think, and the Commission is not still taking action. So we're pointing again to the same direction of there is the Commission, and this is a deadlock. It refuses to do its role under the treaty, as a guardian of the treaty. Is that a point where we need to focus on? I'm asking to all the speakers. And we have 5 minutes left, so please be brief.
I can start quickly on Friedman's questions. Actually, it's something we're looking at, and it's interesting to see that in the latest General Advocate's conclusion on the same topic, saying that it's okay, we know what the case law is. Stop asking questions. So maybe the court is going to go on and on saying the same position, and that could weaken member states like France, who has a very narrow interpretation. So what's going to be interesting too is to see if the Commission do something to enforce this position. If the Commission is going to wait to citizens to seize it, or if it's going to do some action for failure by itself. So I think it's, as I said, there is a moment of tension right now, maybe in European Union, about enforcing law, and it's only the beginning, so we have a part to play in there.
Any final words from Patrick or Rena before we close the session? It's too short.
That's what I was going to say. We can tell that we are running out of time before we've had the opportunity to discuss everything and talk with our audience. And so I think it will make sense to keep in touch and have more meetings and continue the networking to see internationally what are the developments and how can we challenge them. There's a great thing list at EDRI. I'm sure Claire will go into that, and we will also continue our work and try to bring people on this. And let's, as Rena said, let's be really persistent and a pain in the neck.
very great words of conclusion. Yes, indeed, if you want to support a network, transnational civil society mobilization, as Luisa put it in the chat, you can join ESRI member. The members in Germany, like Digital Courage, are working on those topics. La Quadrature as well in France. You can go to ESRI website, esri.org, and check the map of members and maybe join them and support our efforts. And you can also support, obviously, us at European level. We'll continue monitoring what the Commission has in mind for the next year. We have a mailing list that is open to external beside members. You can drop an email to me. You'll find my email address on the website as well. And I'm gladly will add you if you want to take part in the mobilization. I take the few seconds left I have to thank my dear speakers. Thank you so much for the great insight. I was super revigorated for this morning after the talks, and I hope we'll do our best to fight against data retention for the years to come. Thank you.
Much.
Thank you.